At 6 a.m., the alarm went off, just like it does every single day. But this day, this Tuesday, was the day my life split into before and after. This was the day I caught my son and his wife calling him the new owner of my house. That little beep, beep, beep from my kitchen alarm is my signal. It's not a loud, jarring noise. It's just persistent. It means two things: time to take my blood pressure pill and time to start the coffee. I've been a widow for 9 years now, and you learn to rely on these small routines. They're a comfort. They're the tracks that keep the day moving forward. I slipped my feet into my slippers and pulled my old robe on, shuffling out of my bedroom. I was expecting the usual morning quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator. But I stopped. I heard voices. They were low, coming from the hallway near the guest room. It was Marshall and Jean, my son and his wife. They'd driven in late last night from Miami, or so they said. I was still surprised by the visit. Marshall hadn't been home in almost 6 months, and this trip was announced with a short text. "Mom, need to see you. Be there Monday night." I smiled to myself in the dim light. It was nice to have them here, even if their visits had become, well, less frequent. I was about to call out, "Morning! Coffee's starting," when I heard Jean's voice. It was sharp and clear in the morning, quiet. My bedroom door was still cracked open just a few inches. I heard her whisper, and it wasn't a loving, sleepy whisper. It was a business whisper. "We'll handle the utilities today," she said, "and by Friday, you'll be the new owner." A cold, heavy silence filled the hallway for a second. Then I heard my son, my Marshall. His voice was lower, harder than I remembered it. "It's fine," he answered. "Mom won't fight it. Mom won't fight it." I froze. My hand was still on my doorknob. I couldn't breathe. The new owner? Of what? It couldn't be, but it was. This house. My house. My paid-off Naples home. This wasn't just drywall and a roof. This was my security. This was the house Frank and I bought when we first moved to Florida. This was the mortgage I worked double shifts at the library to pay off after he passed. This was the brand new air conditioner I'd just spent $7,000 on last summer, emptying most of my savings because I knew it was a smart investment in my future. This house is all I have. It's my nest egg, my retirement, my safety, and they were talking about it like it was a used car they were flipping. And my own son, my only child, thought I wouldn't fight. The blood was pounding in my ears. I don't know how long I stood there, holding my breath. A minute? 5. Finally, I just pushed the door open. I stepped out into the hallway. They both jumped. They were standing right by my little home office, their heads bent together. They went completely, unnaturally silent. "Jean, oh, Jean," she smiled at me. But it was all teeth. It was too wide, too fast. "Morning, Janet. You're up early." Marshall just looked at his feet. He couldn't meet my eyes. He cleared his throat and brushed past me, changing the subject. "Smells like coffee's about to be ready," he mumbled, walking straight to the kitchen. "I'll get the cups." I wanted to scream. I wanted to hold up my hand and say, "New owner of what?" I wanted to grab Marshall by the shoulders and ask him what happened to the boy I raised, the boy who used to hold my hand when we crossed the street. But I didn't. I just nodded. My voice came out shaky. "Good morning." "Yes. Coffee will be ready in a minute." As soon as they were settled at the kitchen table, their backs to me, I didn't go to the coffee pot. I walked straight into my office and quietly shut the door. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold a pen. I grabbed the yellow legal pad I keep for shopping lists. I wrote down the exact words. "Jean, by Friday you'll be the new owner." "Marshall, Mom won't fight it." I looked at the clock on my desk. 6:04 a.m. I wrote that down, too. My mind was racing. What do I do? What do I do? Then I remembered. My church, First Presbyterian, held a seminar last spring. Seniors and financial safety. I'd almost skipped it. I'd thought, that's for other people. That's for people whose kids aren't nice. But I went, and I'd kept the little packet. I dug it out of my desk drawer, under the stamps, and the checkbook. There it was. A bookmark with a business card stapled to it for a local attorney. I'd kept it, thinking, just in case. I stared at the card. Just in case was here. My heart was hammering. It was only 6:15 in the morning. Their office wouldn't be open, but I saw a number for new clients, and I dialed it, expecting a machine. A woman answered, a real, live person. Ortiz Law, how can I help you? I almost dropped the phone. It cupped my hand over my mouth, whispering, my name is Janet Campbell. I think I have an emergency. It's about my property. I need to speak with an attorney. The receptionist was calm. She didn't ask a single question about why. She just said, Mrs. Ortiz has a cancellation this morning. We can fit you in at 11:30 a.m. today. Today, not next week. Today. Relief washed over me so fast I felt dizzy. Yes, I said, thank you. I'll be there. I hung up the phone. I took my first real breath since I'd woken up. I felt like I had a lifeline. I had a plan. I stood up, turned around, and I gasped. Jean was standing right in my office doorway. She wasn't smiling anymore. Her arms were crossed, and her eyes were fixed on the phone in my hand. She was just listening. Her question hung in the air, sharp as a needle. Who was that, Janet? I clutched the phone, so hard my knuckles were white. She had heard. Maybe not the words, but she'd heard the terror in my voice. She knew this wasn't a normal call. I turned, forcing my face to be as blank as a sheet of paper. It was just Sarah from the church, I said. My voice was surprisingly steady. About the rummage sale. Jean's plastic smile didn't waver, but her eyes went flat. Cold. At 6:15 in the morning, about a rummage sale. We're early risers, Jean, I said. I stepped past her, out of the office. I didn't push her, but I made her move. The coffee's ready. I'm going to take a shower and get dressed. I didn't wait for a reply. I walked into my bedroom and shut the door, turning the lock. My back hit the wood, and my legs finally gave out. I slid down until I was sitting on the floor, my heart beating so fast I thought it would burst. Mom won't fight it. Marshall's words echoed in my head, worse than Jean's. How did we get here? How did my son, the boy I took to Little League, the boy who cried for a week when his dog, Chester, died, become a man? Who would say that? This life I have, it's a quiet one, but it's mine. Frank and we weren't rich. We were careful. When he passed, I had his small pension and my Social Security. It's a fixed income. I watch my pennies. I have my modest savings, the money I'm supposed to live on for the next 20 years. But it's enough. It's enough because this house, my little slice of Naples, is paid for. It's my peace. It's my homestead. My days have a rhythm. I wake up, I have my coffee, and I go for my walk. I'm not one of those power walkers in the fancy outfits. I just walk down Gulf Shore Boulevard, feel the warm air, and watch the water. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I volunteer at the St. Matthew's thrift shop. It gets me out of the house. I see people. I straighten the housewares. I feel useful. In the afternoon, I work in my little garden. It's just 2 pots, really. One for basil, one for tomatoes. There is nothing better than a fresh tomato, still warm from the sun, with a little salt. That's my life. It's simple. It's safe. Or it was. Marshall, he was a good boy. A good man, I thought. When he was younger, he'd call every Sunday. We'd talk about the weather, about his job, about the Dolphins game. But about 5 years ago, he took that new tech job in Miami. And he met Jean. Slowly, everything changed. The calls got shorter. Hey Mom, just checking in. Busy week. Holidays were skipped. Jean's family is doing a big thing in the Keys, Mom. You understand. We'll see you for Easter. They never did. Jean was polite. She smiled. She said, thank you. But she was guarded. She was like a new, locked file cabinet. You could see the outside, but you had no idea what was inside. She pushed for quick decisions. Their wedding was small and fast before the fiscal quarter ended. She'd said, I thought it was a strange way to talk about a wedding. Then, the pressure started. It was subtle at first. 3 calls in the last 2 months. Janet, we were just thinking, Jean said on the phone one night, you should really streamline your accounts. Just to make things easier, for convenience. I don't know, dear. I'd said, everything seems fine. My bills get paid. A week later, Marshall called. Mom, we're just worried. What if something happens? We should add my name to the accounts, just for emergencies. I felt uneasy, a little knot in my stomach. I have a will, Marshall. Everything is in the will. A will is messy, Mom. He'd insisted. This is just cleaner. I delayed. I said I'd think about it. But the worst one was a few weeks ago. Marshall called, and he sounded rehearsed. Mom, Jean's friend at the bank mentioned a simple form. It's called a quitclaim deed. It just helps organize the property. It's a simple form, that's all. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm not a fool. I'm not signing anything I don't understand. Marshall, a deed doesn't sound simple. Jean got on the extension, her voice a little too sweet. Oh, Janet, it's nothing. It's just a piece of paper. You're making it too complicated. I hung up that day, feeling cold. And now I knew why. A simple form. By Friday, you'll be the new owner. My hands stopped shaking. The fear was still there, but now there was something else. Anger. Cold, hard anger. I stood up from the floor. I got dressed, not in my gardening shorts or my volunteer smock. I put on my good navy slacks, a white blouse, and my comfortable Clarks. I put on a little lipstick. I was going to see a lawyer. I was going to war. I went back to my office. Jean and Marshall were in the living room, the television on, pretending everything was normal. I could hear them laughing at a commercial. The sound made my skin crawl. I opened my file cabinet. I pulled out the folder for the house. I took the original deed. I took my latest property tax bill. I grabbed a utility bill. I took my ID. I put all of it into my big black purse. I grabbed the yellow legal pad with the words I'd written down and put that in, too. I added a few questions. What is a quitclaim deed? How do I protect my house? Can they force me to sign? It was 10:45 a.m. time to go. I took a deep breath, walked into the living room, and grabbed my car keys from the little hook by the door. Marshall muted the TV. He stood up instantly. Where are you going, Mom? I kept my voice light. I have an appointment. An appointment? Jean asked, her head tilting. With who? Just an errand. I need to go to the bank. I lied. It felt close enough to the truth. Marshall smiled, and it wasn't his smile. It was that new, cold smile. Great. We'll come with you. We actually need to talk to them anyway. My blood ran cold. No, that's all right, Marshall. I can handle this myself. It's just a quick stop. I turned and put my hand on the doorknob. Marshall's hand landed on my arm. It wasn't violent. It wasn't a push, but it was firm. It was heavy. It was a warning. Don't be silly, Mom, he said, his voice quiet. I'll drive. We'll help. He wasn't asking. He was telling me, and he was blocking the door. I looked at his hand on my arm. Then I looked up and met his eyes. Marshall, I said, my voice quiet but hard as a rock, take your hand off me. He was so surprised. He did. I will go to my appointment, I said, opening the front door. You are welcome to ride in the car, but you will not help and you will not drive. I am driving my car. Jean's face tightened, but Marshall just looked stunned. I hadn't used that mother voice in 20 years. I walked to the driver's side and got in. I didn't lock the doors. I just sat there, put the key in the ignition, and waited. A moment later, Marshall got in the passenger seat, and Jean got in the back. We sat in silence. I could feel Jean's anger radiating from the back seat like heat. I backed out of my own driveway with my son and his wife sitting in my car like two jailers. I started driving. For a few minutes, no one spoke. The only sound was the clicking of the turn signal. Finally, Jean leaned forward from the back seat. Your bank is on the corner of Pine Ridge, Janet. You just passed the turn. I kept my eyes on the road. My banker, Mr. Henderson, moved. I lied. He's at their main administrative office now, for estates and trusts. He said I had to meet him there. It was a good lie. It sounded official. It explained why we were heading toward the Tamiami Trail instead of my usual little branch. Marshall just stared out the window. You should have told us, he muttered. I'm telling you now, I said. We pulled into the parking lot of a small, respectable-looking office complex. It didn't look like a bank. It was low-rise beige stucco with a lot of palm trees. The sign out front said, Ortiz Law and Associates. Jean saw at the same time Marshall did. This is a lawyer's office, she said, her voice like ice. You're seeing a lawyer? What on earth for? I put the car in park. I turned and looked right at her. Yes, I am. And I'm going in alone. Like hell you are, Marshall said, his hand on the door handle. If you're talking to a lawyer, we're coming in. No, I said. I pulled my purse into my lap, holding it like a shield. This is my private business. You can wait in the car, or you can wait in the lobby. But you are not coming into the meeting. I got out of the car and walked away. I didn't look back to see if they were following. I just walked, my head held high, right through the glass doors. The office inside was calm. The air conditioning was cool, and there was a small, pleasant fountain bubbling in the corner. The receptionist smiled at me. Mrs. Campbell? For Mrs. Ortiz. Yes, I breathed, relief washing over me. I'm Janet Campbell. Just then, the glass doors opened again. Marshall and Jean stormed in, their faces like thunderclouds. We're here with her, Marshall announced to the receptionist. The receptionist didn't even blink. Of course. Mrs. Ortiz will be right with you. Please have a seat. Before either of them could sit down, a woman came out. She was not what I expected. She was youngish, maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple blue dress and looked calm, practical. Mrs. Campbell, I'm Dana Ortiz. Please come on back. She looked at Marshall and Jean. Will you be joining us? Yes, Marshall said. No, I said at the same exact time. Dana looked at me. I looked right back at her. Mrs. Ortiz, I said, I am here to discuss my personal finances and my property. I would like to speak with you alone first. Dana nodded. That's perfectly fine. She looked at my son. I'll come and get you if Mrs. Campbell decides she'd like you to join. You could have heard a pin drop. Marshall looked like he wanted to argue, but this wasn't my hallway. This was her office. He and Jean sat down hard in the lobby chairs, looking furious. Dana led me back to her office. It was simple, clean, with a big window. I sat down, and the words just spilled out. I told her everything. The 6 a.m. alarm. The whispers. The exact words. I pulled out my yellow legal pad and showed her my note with the time. By Friday, you'll be the new owner. Mom won't fight it. She read it, and her calm expression didn't change, but her eyes got very, very sharp. Mrs. Campbell, she said, You did exactly the right thing by writing this down. And you did the right thing by coming here. She didn't tell me I was overreacting. She didn't say, "Oh, it's just a misunderstanding." She took me seriously. "Let's talk in plain English," she said, leaning forward. "First, do not sign anything. I don't care if they tell you it's a simple form. I don't care if they tell you it's just for emergencies. You sign nothing." She then said the magic word. "Especially, do not sign a quitclaim deed. A quitclaim deed gives away your house. It is not a simple form. It is a full transfer of ownership. Is that clear?" "Yes," I said, my voice hoarse. That was the exact form Marshall had mentioned. "Good," she said. "Second, adding Marshall to your bank accounts for convenience is also a bad idea. It makes your money his money. There are better, safer ways to handle things if you become ill." "Like what?" "Like a revocable living trust," she said. "It sounds complicated, but it's not. Think of it as a strong box. You put your house and your accounts into the box. You are the boss, the trustee. You control everything just like you do now. You name someone to be the boss after you're gone, or if you're ever unable. It's clean, it avoids probate court, and no one can touch your assets while you are alive and well." She was giving me answers. She was giving me tools. "What they are doing," she continued, her voice firm, "this pressure, this attempt to get you to sign things you don't understand, that has a name. It's called elder financial exploitation. And it is a crime. Your note, with the time and the exact words, is your first piece of evidence." She told me exactly what to do next. "Go home and change your online banking passwords. Add two-factor authentication. That's where they text you a code. Get a new notebook and start a log. Every time they talk to you about money, you write down the date, the time, and what they said. Just the facts. No emotions." I felt stronger. I felt like I could breathe. "Now," she said, "about your son and daughter-in-law in my lobby. We have a choice. We can send you out the back door, or I can invite them in right now to this neutral ground, and we can ask them to explain what they're trying to do. We'll just listen. We'll let their words show their plan." I thought about it. I was scared, but I was also angry. "Let's invite them in," I said. Dana nodded, a small, approving smile on her face. "Good. Let's see what they have to say." She stood up to get them. I sat up straighter, my purse in my lap. I was ready. As I was waiting, my phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out. It was a text message from Jean. It had come through while I was in the office 5 minutes ago. It read, "Don't forget the bank visit at 3. We'll get the form done fast." My blood ran cold. The 3 p.m. bank visit. The one they had planned. The one I knew nothing about. My appointment this morning was just a lucky coincidence. They had a whole other plan for this afternoon. They were going to take me to a bank to get the form. And I knew in my bones it was a quitclaim deed. I looked down at the glowing screen in my hand, at Jean's words, "We'll get the form done fast." Dana, the lawyer, had her hand on her office doorknob, ready to go get my son. "Mrs. Campbell, are you all right?" I held up the phone. My hand was shaking again. "She sent me this 5 minutes ago. They already have an appointment at my bank at 3 o'clock to get the form." Dana walked back to her desk and read the text. Her face went grim. "All right," she said, her voice all business. "This changes things. They've already set the trap. We're not going to invite them in here. What do I do?" I whispered. "You're going to go," she said. "You're going to go to that 3 p.m. appointment." My heart sank. "Alone? With them?" "You won't be alone," Dana said, tapping her pen on her desk. "You have my advice. This is a test, Janet. They are going to pressure you. You are going to say one simple sentence. You're going to practice it right now. She looked me in the eye. Repeat after me. We are not signing any changes today. I swallowed. We are not signing any changes today. Again, she said, we are not signing any changes today. Good. That is your shield. They will push. They will wheedle. They will try to make you feel guilty. You will be a broken record. We are not signing any changes today. You are there to gather information, not to give in. Ask for everything in writing. Ask for brochures. Get the banker's business card. And you sign nothing. Can you do that? I nodded. The fear was still there, but that cold anger was back. Yes, I can. Good. Now, I'm going to walk you out. I will tell your son and daughter-in-law that our consultation is over and that I have advised you on your estate. She led me to the lobby. Marshall and Jean shot up from their chairs. Their faces were stormy. Our time is up for today, Dana said, her voice pleasant but firm as steel. Mrs. Campbell has all the information she needs. You'll be hearing from my office. She handed me her card. Call me the second you leave that bank, she whispered. I walked out of that office with my head held high. Marshall and Jean scrambled after me, completely wrong-footed. We got back into my car. The silence was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. I drove for 2 hours, just drove. I went to the grocery store. I bought milk and bread. I went to the dry cleaner. I was just killing time. They sat in the car, fuming. They knew they'd lost control. At 2:50 p.m., I pulled into the parking lot of my bank branch in North Naples. We're here, I said. Jean was out of the car before I'd even turned the engine off. We're meeting Alan, she snapped and marched inside. Marshall got out and looked at me over the roof of the car. Mom, what was that? What lawyer? What's going on? I'm protecting my future, Marshall, I said, and walked past him into the bank. A young man in a blue suit, Alan on his name tag, was already standing with Jean. He smiled at me. Mrs. Campbell, so glad you could make it. Jean and Marshall were just telling me you wanted to streamline a few things today. We're here to listen, I said, remembering Dana's advice. We sat down at his little round table. It felt so normal, so professional. Jean started talking immediately. She had a whole script. We're just so worried about Mom, Alan. She's all alone, and with her blood pressure. Well, we just want to make sure Marshall can help if there's an emergency. We just need to add him to her accounts. It's what everyone does, right? Just for convenience. Alan, the banker, smiled. That's certainly an option, he said, turning to me. We can add a payable on death beneficiary, or we can make the account joint with Dash. No, Jean cut in. We need him on the account now, as a co-owner, for emergencies. It's simpler. Alan looked a little taken aback. Well, a joint Dash, he started. I put my hand on the table. I looked right at Alan. We are not signing any changes today. The words felt good in my mouth. Solid. Jean's smile froze. Mom, don't be difficult. This is what we discussed. It's just a simple form. I am not signing anything today, I repeated, my voice calm. I would, however, like some brochures on all the account types you just mentioned, the payable on death and the joint accounts. I'd like to read about them. Alan, relieved to have a task, started pulling pamphlets from his desk. Of course, Mrs. Campbell. It's always wise to read the materials. Jean was furious. I could see a little muscle jumping in her jaw. She was losing. Then she slipped. She tried to recover. That's fine. But we also need to get the deed access as well for the house. So we can manage that too. Alan stopped shuffling papers. He looked confused. The deed? Ma'am, that's not a bank document. A deed is a property record filed with the county. We don't handle that here. I just sat there. I let his words hang in the air. That's not a bank document. Jean's face went pale, then red. She'd been caught. She was trying to blend bank accounts and house deed into one simple form. I turned to Alan. I had one more thing to do. Alan, could you do me a favor? I'm just trying to get my papers organized. Could you print me a current status letter for my accounts, just showing that I am the sole owner? And could you add a note to my file that I requested no third-party access be granted without my express written permission, and that I'm taking all information home to review? This was my micro-win. Absolutely, he said. He typed for a minute, and the printer behind him whirred. He signed the letter and handed it to me. Here you go, Mrs. Campbell. You are the sole owner on all your accounts, and I've noted your request. I folded the letter. I put it in my purse, along with all the brochures. I stood up. Thank you for your time, Alan. I walked out of the bank. I didn't get 5 steps into the parking lot before Jean grabbed my arm. What was that? She hissed, her voice low and vicious. The lawyer, the act in the bank. What are you doing? I am protecting my home, I said, pulling my arm free. Marshall just stood there, looking lost. Mom, you're making this so hard. Hard, I said. You think this is hard? Jean stepped right up to me, her eyes drilling into mine. This is why nothing moves forward. You're impossible. You know, we were trying to do this the easy way. Fine. A notary is coming to the house tomorrow morning. We'll get this done. She and Marshall turned and got in my car, slamming the doors. I stood in the parking lot for a full minute, the hot Florida sun beating down on me. A notary coming to my house. I pulled out my phone. I didn't call Dana. Not yet. I opened my notes app. I made a new note. Date, October 27th. Place, bank parking lot. Time, 3:22 p.m. words. Jean said, a notary is coming to the house tomorrow morning. Then I put the phone away, got into the driver's seat of my car, and drove my 2 guests home. That night was the longest of my life. The house was too quiet. Every time the air conditioner clicked on, I jumped. Marshall and Jean were in the guest room, their doors shut, whispering. They didn't come out for dinner. I didn't make any. I just sat at my kitchen table, staring at the dark backyard, my logbook open. A notary is coming to the house tomorrow morning. What was I supposed to do? Call the police? I had no proof, just their words. They'd say I was a confused old woman. They were my family. I did the only thing I could. I called Dana. I whispered into the phone, telling her what Jean had threatened in the parking lot. Janet, Dana's voice was calm and steady, and it was the only steady thing in my world right now. Listen to me very carefully. You are not required to let a notary into your home. You are not required to let anyone in. You can tell them to leave right through the closed door. You can say you will only do this at my office. You are in complete control. I know, I whispered back, my eyes on the guest room door. But they won't stop. They'll just find another way. They think I'm weak. They think I won't fight. An idea, a cold, hard, terrible idea, began to form in my mind. It felt sneaky. It felt wrong. It felt, if I was honest, like something Jean would do. Dana, I said, what if I let them in? What if I let them talk? What if I record them? There was a long silence on the phone. Janet, she said, finally, legally Florida is a 2-party consent state. That means you can't secretly record a conversation. My heart sank. Oh, so I can't. Unless, she continued, you are in your own home and you have no reasonable expectation of privacy. But it's risky. It's legally gray. They could challenge it. A better way would be to put your phone on the table and just tell them. I'm recording this for my records. I almost laughed. And have them walk right out. No, they're coming into my home to try and take it. I don't feel like being polite. Janet, Dana warned, This can be unpredictable. The cleanest win is to refuse them entry. But if you do let them in, and you do record them, and they do admit to their plan, it would be very powerful evidence. She didn't tell me to do it, but she didn't tell me not to. The next morning, I was up before my 6 a.m. alarm. I made my coffee. I sat at my kitchen table, and I waited. I opened the voice memos app on my smartphone. My granddaughter had shown it to me once to record a recipe I was giving her. I looked at the little red button. At 9:45 a.m., the doorbell rang. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stood up. I walked to the kitchen counter. I opened the app. I pressed the red button. A little red line started moving. I put the phone down on the counter right next to my fruit bowl and slid a pot holder halfway over it. It was hidden, but not completely. It just looked like I'd set my phone down. I took a deep breath. I walked to the door and opened it. There they were. Jean, looking impatient. Marshall, standing behind her, staring at his shoes. And a small, nervous-looking woman in a wrinkled suit carrying a large briefcase. The notary. "Good morning," I said. My voice was like a stranger's, calm and even. "Janet," Jean said, "all business. This is Mary. She's the notary. We're here to sign the papers. Let's just get this done." She started to step inside, expecting me to back away. But I smiled. "Oh, of course," I said, stepping back and opening the door wide. "Where are my manners? Please come in. All of you, let's sit at the kitchen table. It's much more comfortable. Can I get anyone some coffee?" They all froze. This was not what they expected. They'd been ready for a fight at the door. I had just invited the enemy into my fortress. They walked in, confused. They all sat down at my kitchen table, just 5 feet from my recording phone. Mary, the notary, opened her briefcase. Mrs. Campbell, she started pulling out a stapled packet of papers. The title page was stark white. It read in big black letters, "Deed transfer." "Oh, there it is," I said, reaching out and pulling the packet toward me. The simple form. "You know, Jean, you and Marshall are so much better at this financial talk than I am. I'm still a little fuzzy on it. Just for my own peace of mind, could you tell me what is this for exactly?" I looked right at Jean. I looked at her like she was my loving daughter-in-law, here to help. Marshall shifted in his chair. "Mom, it's just for convenience. You know, in case." Jean cut him off with a sharp look. She was getting impatient. This was taking too long. "Janet, we went over this. It's just to add Marshall to the title, so he can help you. Help with the bills, the equity. It's just simpler." I held the papers in my hand. "Equity? I don't have a loan, dear." "What equity?" Jean let out an exasperated sigh. She'd had enough of the confused old lady routine. She finally snapped. "Look," she said, her voice low and sharp. "It's not complicated. It's a simple transfer. We transfer the deed, just for a little while. We hold the house for a bit. We get the equity loan we need for our new project in Miami, and then, when we're done, we give it back." She leaned in, her smile gone. "It is not a big deal. You are making this so much harder than it has to be." The kitchen was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator hum. Marshall was staring at the table, his face white, but it wasn't just them. Mary, the notary, had frozen. Her pen was hovering over her logbook. She looked at Jean. She looked at me. Then she looked at the deed transfer form on the table. "Excuse me," Mary said, her voice small. "What did you just say? Get an equity loan? Give it back." She looked at me, her eyes wide. "Mrs. Campbell, do you understand that this document, this is a deed transfer? This is not temporary. This is a full and permanent conveyance of your property. You would be signing your house away. You would not be the owner anymore. This document does not say anything about giving it back. Jean's face turned to thunder. She doesn't know what she's talking about. It's a family arrangement. The notary stood up, her hands visibly shaking as she packed her briefcase. I'm sorry. I am not comfortable with this. I cannot be a party to this. This signing it's not valid if the signer is being misled. I'm leaving. She practically ran to the front door. Jean shot up from her chair, her face a mask of pure, unfiltered rage. You, she screamed at me. You did this. You planned this. I didn't move. I just looked at her. My voice was ice cold. I think you should leave my house. Now, Marshall finally looked up at me, and what I saw in his eyes, it wasn't anger. It was shame. Pure, bottomless shame. He stood up, grabbed Jean's arm, and pulled her toward the door. Jean, let's go. Just let's go. They left. I walked to the front door, shut it, and locked the deadbolt. My knees finally buckled. I leaned against the door, my whole body trembling. I had done it. I had faced them down in my own home. I heard their car squeal out of the driveway. I pushed myself off the door and walked back to the kitchen on legs that felt like wet cement. I walked to the counter, past the fruit bowl. My phone was still there. I picked it up. I pressed stop. The file saved. 10:02 a.m. 14 minutes, 31 seconds. I had it. I had her voice. I had her entire plan right there in my hand. I sank into my kitchen chair. That night, I went to take the garbage can to the curb. When I opened the mailbox to put the little red flag down, my fingers hit an envelope. I pulled it out. A thick manila envelope. No stamp. No return address. Just my name, Janet, scrawled on the front. My heart stopped. I took it inside, to the kitchen light. I tore it open. It was a copy of the deed transfer packet, the same one from that morning. All the pages were there, pre-filled with my name, my address, and the legal description of my house. The signature line was blank. It wasn't a form. It was a threat. It was a message. We're not done. I didn't panic. I photographed every single page with my phone. I wrote down the date and time in my logbook, and I put the whole envelope into the folder for my lawyer. I stood there in my kitchen, holding that envelope, the pre-filled deed. It wasn't a question anymore. It wasn't a request. It was a threat. It was them saying, we will get this house, one way or another. The fear was gone. I wasn't shaking. I was just cold. And I was done. I was done being scared in my own home. I was done being lied to. I was done being treated like a fool. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Dana. Not yet. I called Marshall. He picked up on the second ring, his voice wary. Mom. Marshall, I said. My voice wasn't his mother's. It was the voice of Janet Campbell, the woman who paid off this house. You, me, and Jean. My lawyer's office. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. I've already confirmed the time with Dana. I expect you both to be there. I didn't wait for a reply. I just hung up. The next morning, I was at Dana's office at 9:45. I brought my folder. It had my first note. Mom won't fight it. It had the bank status letter. It had the audio recording on my phone. And now, it had the unsigned deed they'd left in my mailbox. I laid it all out on the conference table before they even arrived. They walked in at 10:03. They looked like they hadn't slept. Marshall wouldn't look at me. Jean looked like she chewed on wasps. This time, I didn't wait for them to talk. I didn't wait for them to lie. I started. I called this meeting. I said, so that we can all be perfectly clear. We are going to talk about my life. The facts, not feelings. Facts. Dana sat beside me, silent, a legal pad in front of her. Fact, I said, I am 69 years old. I live on a fixed income. my Social Security, and Frank's small pension. That's it. It does not go up. Fact. My homeowner's insurance just increased by 20%. My property taxes went up 6%. My food costs more every single week. This is my reality. I leaned forward, which brings me to the most important fact of all. This house, this paid-off house is not my extra. It is not a bonus. It is my only security. It is what stands between me and a state-run nursing home. It is what stands between me and poverty. It is mine. I turned my head and looked right at my son. Marshall, I love you. You are my son. But I need you to hear me. I will not give up ownership of my home while I am alive. His head snapped up. He finally looked at me. I will not sign a quitclaim deed, I said, my voice low and hard. I will not add you for convenience. I will not sign a simple form that lets you take out an equity loan on my property. It is not going to happen. The silence in that room was heavy. Marshall just stared, his mouth open. Jean couldn't stand it. She exploded. You're not being fair, she said, her voice sharp. You're not. It wasn't like that. We are under so much stress. This Miami project, it's a cash flow issue, that's all. It's temporary. She finally said it. The truth. The plan, she said, leaning at me across the table, was to use the equity, just for a few months. We would get the loan, we'd get the project funded, and then we would transfer it right back. It was just a short-term plan to help your son. Before I could even speak, Dana leaned forward. Her voice was perfectly calm. Mrs. Campbell, she said, addressing me, but speaking to them, what Jean is describing is called financial exploitation. And what she calls a short-term plan is a legal and financial fantasy. It's incredibly risky. She turned her gaze to Jean. Let's be clear. If Janet signed that deed and you got a loan and your project had one single problem, one missed payment, one contractor's lien, the bank would seize this house. Her house. And she would be homeless. There is no transfer back later clause in a deed. Jean's face went white. Dana continued. If your concern was truly about helping your mother manage her affairs in an emergency or setting up her estate, the correct tool would be a revocable living trust. Janet would put the house in the trust, and she would remain the boss. The trustee. She would be in 100% control, just as she is now. Or, in some cases, a transfer on death deed. Those are the safe, legal options. Options that protect Janet, not strip her of her only asset. I had my voice back. I looked at Marshall. I looked at Jean. This is over, I said. The pressure stops today. There will be no more surprise forms. There will be no more notaries at my door. There will be no more texts about the bank. There will be no more unsigned deeds in my mailbox. I stood up. From this moment on, if you have one single thing to say to me about my house, my money, or my accounts, you will not say it to me. You will say it to my attorney. You will call Dana. We are done talking about this. I had said my piece. I felt empty but strong. Jean was fuming, her arms crossed, silent. But Marshall, my son, his face just crumpled. He put his head in his hands for a second. When he looked up, his eyes were red. Mom, he said, and his voice was thick. It was the voice of the boy who'd lost his dog. Mom, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I'm sorry we scared you. I never meant for it to go this far. I'm just so sorry. I just nodded. I heard him. I saw the tears in his eyes. But I didn't run over to him. I didn't say, it's okay. It wasn't okay. I looked at Jean. She was looking at Marshall with pure disgust. She stood up, grabbing her purse. She didn't look at me. She didn't apologize. She just looked at her husband. We'll figure it out another way. She turned and walked out of the conference room. Marshall gave me one last broken look and followed his wife. I sat back down, my hands shaking. I had won, but I had no idea what I'd just lost. And that threat, another way, it just hung in the air, cold and sharp. I sat there in that conference room chair, staring at the empty doorway my son had just walked through. We'll figure it out another way. Jean's words were still hanging in the air, sharp and cold as glass. Janet! Dana's voice brought me back. I looked at her. I didn't feel like I'd won. I just felt tired. They're gone, Janet, she said softly. But they are not the priority right now. You are. We need to act. That threat. Another way means we move now. We protect you on paper so thoroughly that any other way they try is a dead end. She was right. I took a deep breath. The anger had burned out. Now, it was time to build the walls. That revocable living trust you mentioned, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Let's start that. Today. Dana nodded, a small, proud smile on her face. She pulled out a new set of forms. This is the engagement letter, she said. This starts the process. We will create the Janet Campbell Revocable Living Trust. You are the boss, the trustee. We will move your house into the trust. We will move your bank accounts into the trust. You control everything just as you do now. But the ownership is in the trust's name, not yours. It makes you a much, much harder target for any kind of deed transfer nonsense. I signed the paper. It felt good. It felt heavy. Next, she said, your health care surrogate. The person who makes medical decisions for you if you can't. Who is that? My heart sank. For 30 years, the answer in my head had always been Marshall. I couldn't write his name. I couldn't risk Jean whispering in his ear while I was in a hospital bed. Not Marshall. I said, the words tasting like ash. My niece. In Chicago. Can it be her? Absolutely. Dana said, writing it down. She's trustworthy. That's all that matters. We'll update your living will at the same time. We went through everything. We updated the beneficiaries on my accounts, making sure my niece was the payable on death contact, so no one had to go through probate court. Then Dana suggested something I hadn't thought of. Let's make a life binder. A set of instructions. Who is your handyman? Who do you call for the AC? Where are your bills paid from? We'll put a list with phone numbers right in the front. We'll make it so your niece or anyone you trust can step in and keep your life running without having to ask your son for a single password. I drove home. The house felt huge and empty. I walked to the guest room. They were gone. Their suitcases, their phone chargers, the dent in the pillows. Everything. It was like they'd evaporated. I stood in the hallway for a minute. The house was mine again, but it didn't feel safe. Not yet. I went to my phone. I didn't call my friends. I called a locksmith. Yes, I said, I'd like to change the locks. Today, if possible. 2 hours later, a nice man in a blue van was standing on my porch. I didn't get new keys. I got keypad locks. For the front door and the back. He showed me how to set the code. I typed in 6 numbers. Frank's birthday. That night, for the first time in a week, I went to bed without putting a chair under the doorknob. I just pressed the button. I heard the ZZT thunk of the deadbolt sliding into place. I was in control. The next morning, I woke up and I felt lighter. I looked out the front window. The 2 big hibiscus shrubs by the walkway were brown and dead. They had been for months. I'd been too distracted, too worried to even notice. I drove to the garden center. I bought 2 new ones, bright red. I came home, I got my gloves, and I dug my hands into the dirt. I pulled out the old, dead roots. I put in the new, healthy plants. I soaked them with water. I fixed the squeaky screen door that had been annoying me for a year. I was taking my house back, one small piece at a time. But I was still lonely. I was safe, but I was isolated. I'd been hiding. I remembered my neighbor, Rosa, from down the street, mentioning she joined a morning walking group. I'd always said, "Oh, that's too early for me." The next day, I got up, took my pill, and at 7 a.m., I walked down the street to the corner where they met. Rosa's face lit up. "Janet, you made it." We walked. Me, Rosa, and our neighbor Pete, a widower from New York. We walked all the way down to the Naples Pier. We didn't talk about lawyers or sons or deeds. We talked about the Pelicans. We talked about a new restaurant Pete had tried. We complained about the humidity. It was normal. It was the most normal I'd felt in months. Afterward, we went for coffee. I set my 6 a.m. pill alarm on the table, and Rosa laughed. "Oh, I'm hopeless with those," she said. "My doctor gave me the best tip. I put my pill bottle right on top of my coffee mug before I go to bed. I can't have my coffee in the morning until I pick up the bottle and take the pill. It's the only thing that works." It was so simple, so smart. I went home that day and put my pill bottle on my favorite mug. The next morning, I woke up, saw the bottle, took the pill, and then poured my coffee. I felt sharper. I felt organized. I felt like Janet again. A week went by. My first quiet week. The new shrubs were blooming. The walking group was becoming a routine. Dana had sent me the first drafts of the trust. I was sleeping through the night. Then I went to the mailbox. It was tucked between a catalog and the power bill. A certified letter. The green and white one. My heart just stopped. It wasn't from Marshall. It was from a law firm in Miami. I had to sign for it from the mailman, my hand shaking so hard I could barely hold the pen. I carried it inside. I sat at my kitchen table. I tore it open. It wasn't a lawsuit. Not yet. It was a formal letter on thick, expensive paper. It was from an attorney representing Mr. and Mrs. Marshall Campbell. It stated that they were in dispute over certain personal items left at my residence, including a valuable painting. I looked at the guest room wall. They meant the $20 print of a sailboat I'd bought at the art fair. But the last sentence was the one that made my blood run cold. It said they were currently exploring all legal options regarding the verbal promises of future equity I had repeatedly made to my son over the years. They weren't giving up. Jean's threat was real. They were just starting to fight a new way. A legal way. I sat at my kitchen table, the thick, creamy paper of that lawyer's letter feeling heavy in my hands. Verbal promises of future equity. It was such a cold, legal-sounding phrase. It was Jean's voice, dressed up in a $10,000 suit. They were claiming I had promised them my house. After everything. After the whispers, the notary, the unsigned deed, this was their other way. They were going to try and take my home by lying about my past. My first instinct was to call Marshall and scream, to ask him how he could be a part of this, how he could twist all the years I'd loved him and supported him into a verbal promise. But I didn't. I was a different woman now. I didn't get emotional. I got organized. I picked up the phone and called Dana. I read the letter to her, my voice flat, holding no emotion at all. When I got to the part about future equity, I just read the words and stopped. There was a short, sharp sigh on the other end of the phone. Well, Dana said, I'd say this is an act of pure desperation. It's also ugly as sin. Janet, did you ever, in your life, promise to give Marshall your house? I promised to love him. I said, my voice thick. I promised to be his mother. I probably said, one day, all this will be yours 100 times. But it was just something you say. It wasn't a contract. It wasn't a promise. Of course it wasn't, Dana said, her voice turning to steel. That's not how this works. Don't you worry. Don't you call them. Don't you text them. You do not respond. I will. What are you going to do? I am going to send a formal response on my letterhead to their attorney. It will be very clear. It will deny any and all verbal promises. It will state that you have a comprehensive estate plan in place. And it will end with a very firm request. All future communication regarding this, or any other matter, must be directed only to my office. No further contact with you outside of counsel. Period. When I hung up, I felt a weight lift. I was paying her to be my shield. And she was. A week went by. A quiet, empty, blessedly silent week. The letter had been a bluff, and Dana had called it. There were no more certified letters. No more strange envelopes in my mailbox. No calls. Nothing. For the first time, I started to believe it might actually be over. I fell into my new rhythm. I'd wake up, take my pill off the coffee mug, and go for my walk with Rosa and Pete. I'd come home, water my basil, which was now growing into a big, bushy plant. I'd go to my thrift shop shift on Tuesday. I'd laugh with the other volunteers. In the evenings, I'd sit on my little patio, watch the sunset turn the canal pink, and just breathe. I had my house. I had my peace. I had my new keypad locks. I was safe. I was choosing myself every single day, and it was starting to feel normal. Then, one Thursday afternoon, the phone rang. It wasn't a local number. It was a Miami area code. My heart did a familiar, sick little flip-flop. I looked at the number, ready to let it go to voicemail. But something made me pick it up. Hello, Mom. It was Marshall. He was alone. I could hear it. There was no echo of Gene in the background. It was just him, and he sounded small. Marshall, I said. My voice was neutral, not warm, not cold, just waiting. There was a long silence, just him breathing. I didn't say anything. I didn't fill the void. I just waited. Mom, he finally said, and his voice broke. It just cracked right in half. Mom, I am so sorry. I still didn't speak. I just listened. I'm not calling to ask for anything, he rushed to say, like he knew I was expecting it. I'm not. I had to. I'm so ashamed. He took a shaky breath. It wasn't just scaring you. I know that now. I ignored everything you said. I ignored your boundaries, Mom. I kept pushing because it was easier. It was just easier to think of your house as our plan than to fix my own budget. There it was. The truth. Not Gene's truth. His. We're in trouble, Mom. Real trouble. That Miami project, it's a mess. We're over-leveraged. We're in debt. And I let Gene convince me that your house, your home, was the easy button, the simple form, the quick fix. I knew it was wrong. I knew it. And I let myself treat you like an obstacle. I closed my eyes. I heard the shame in his voice. I heard the exhaustion. I saw that lawyer's letter. He whispered, the one Gene had them send, about verbal promises. I lost my mind. I told her, that's it. That is a lie, and I won't be a part of it. We had a bad fight. I'm staying at a hotel. Mom. He was crying. My son was crying on the phone, and I didn't know what to do. Marshall, I said, my voice still quiet. What are you doing? I'm trying to fix it. My part. My job has a budget class, a financial wellness program. I signed up. I went to the first class last night. It was humiliating, but I did it. And I met with a credit counselor this morning. Just me, not Gene. Just me, to look at my own debt. He was taking steps. He was starting to clean up his own mess A mess he'd almost used my life to pay for. He was quiet for another long moment. I know sorry doesn't fix it, Mom. I know that. I had to tell you. I know now. Your house is not my plan. It's your home. And I am so sorry for what I did to you. To us. I took a deep breath. Thank you for telling me, Marshall. So, he said, his voice small. I guess that's it. He sounded like he was about to hang up. Mom, he said one last time. Can I just call you on Sundays? Like we used to? Not about money. Not about anything. Just to talk? About the weather? About football? Just to talk. My heart ached. The old me, the before me, would have said, of course, baby, anytime. It's all okay. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I was the woman who built walls. Try this Sunday, I said. Short call. We'll see. When I hung up the phone, I didn't feel happy. I just felt, still. We'll see. It was all I could give him. That Sunday came. The phone rang at 10 a.m. I picked it up. Hi, Mom. Hello, Marshall. It was awkward. So terribly awkward. We had 30 years of life between us, and now we were like two strangers on a blind date. It's hot down here, he said from his hotel room in Miami. It's hot here, too, I said, looking out my kitchen window. Looks like we might get a storm this afternoon. Yeah, maybe, he said. We talked like that for maybe 10 minutes. The weather. The Dolphins game. He asked if my neighbor Pete was still borrowing my hedge clippers. I said yes. He didn't mention Jean. I didn't ask. And then he said, okay, Mom. Well, I'll talk to you. Goodbye, Marshall, I said. We hung up. And just like that, the first tiny, fragile thread was laid. The next week, I went to Dana's office. I sat at her big, polished table, and I signed the last page of the Janet Campbell Revocable Living Trust. We went to the bank, my bank with my new friend Alan, and we retitled my accounts. We went to the county recorder's office and filed the deed, transferring my house from Janet Campbell to the Janet Campbell Trust. It was my house. It was my money. I was still the boss. But on paper, I was now a fortress. There was nothing for Jean's lawyers to find, no equity to promise. It was done. I walked out of that building, and for the first time since that 6 a.m. alarm, I felt like the ground was solid under my feet. The war was over. I had won. That night, my phone buzzed. A text message from a number I didn't recognize. It was from Jean. It was 4 words. We're okay. We'll manage. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't polite. But it was a white flag. It was her way of saying, I give up. You win. I stared at the message. I could have deleted it. I could have said, I'm glad to hear it. But I thought for a minute, and I typed back 5 simple words. I wish you both well. I hit send, and then I deleted her number. Life began to settle. It was like the tide coming back in after a hurricane. It was slow, and the landscape was different, but it was coming back. My new life was about new rhythms. My walking group with Rosa and Pete. My volunteer shifts. And on Wednesday mornings, I joined a senior stretch class at the community center. The first day, I stood in the back in my old sweatpants, feeling ridiculous. I tried to touch my toes, and I couldn't even get past my knees. The instructor said, just breathe into it, ladies, and I just laughed. I laughed right out loud at my own tight hamstrings, at how silly we all looked. And the woman next to me, a tiny lady named Mavis, laughed with me. I went home, I took a shower, and that night I slept like a stone. I hadn't slept that well in months. The Sunday calls with Marshall continued. They were still short, still awkward, but they were consistent. One week, he asked, how's your garden? Are those tomatoes still alive? They're taking over the patio. I said, and the basil is like a bush. That afternoon, I made myself a little salad, a fresh tomato, sliced with some basil, a little olive oil, and a sprinkle of salt. The simple taste of my own hard work. I took a picture of it on my phone. I texted it to Marshall. I didn't add a message. No lecture. No, see what I'm doing while you're in a hotel. Just the picture. A minute later, my phone buzzed. Looks good, Mom. The next Sunday, the call felt a little easier. We talked for 12 minutes. He told me he'd found a small apartment to rent. He was still going to his budget classes. He sounded tired but clearer. Then, out of the blue, he said, Mom, you know that iced tea you used to make? The kind with the mint, and was it orange juice in it? Just a splash, I said, smiling. And 2 cloves. That was the secret. Yeah, he said, his voice soft. That was it. Could you tell me how to make it? I sat there on my sofa, the afternoon sun streaming in, and I told my son, my grown-up 40-year-old son, how to boil water and steep tea bags. I told him how to muddle the mint, just a little, to let the oil out. He wrote it all down. It was the first time in 5 years he had asked me for something I could actually give him. A few more weeks went by. The calls got a little longer. 15 minutes. 20. We were finding our way back on this new, narrow path. We talked about his work. I talked about my stretch class. We never, ever talked about money. The boundary was a bright, clear line. Then, one evening, he called on a Tuesday. That was new. Hey, Mom, you busy? Just reading, I said, putting my book down. Everything okay? Yeah, fine. He paused. I could hear him pacing in his little apartment. I was trying to pay my car insurance online, and I couldn't find the password, and I was looking through my desk, and it's a mess, Mom. I waited. It's just paper everywhere. I don't know what's important, what's junk. I realized I'm almost 40, and I don't even know how to keep my papers organized. He took a deep breath. Mom, would you ever show me how you do it? How you keep all the house papers and the bills and everything organized, just so I know? For me, I closed my eyes. He wasn't asking for my papers. He was asking for my system. He wasn't asking for my house. He was asking for my wisdom. I smiled, a real, genuine smile. Next time you visit, Marshall, I said, we'll get some file folders. We'll do it together. My way. The alarm went off. 6 a.m. Beep, beep, beep. It was the same sound as that Tuesday. But this morning, it didn't fill me with ice and terror. It was just an alarm. It was my reminder. I got up, walked to my kitchen counter, and smiled. My little brown pill bottle was sitting right on top of my favorite coffee mug, just where I'd left it, thanks to Rose's tip. I took the pill, poured my coffee, and walked over to my sliding glass door. I looked out at the canal. The sun was just starting to turn the water pink. A little Gulf breeze was blowing in, and it smelled like salt and my new hibiscus flowers. I was here, in my house, and I was safe. It's been 6 months since that first 6 a.m. alarm, the one that split my life into before and after. 6 months since I heard those words that I will never, ever forget. Mom won't fight it. Oh, but they were so wrong. I thought back on everything that had happened. The fear in that hallway, the cold anger in the lawyer's office, the bank, the awful, heart-stopping moment I invited that notary into my kitchen. And I realized as I sipped my coffee what I'd learned. I didn't lose my home. I didn't lose myself in the anger or the sadness. I didn't punish. I protected. I didn't argue or scream. I documented. I didn't cave in. I chose. I chose my own peace. I chose my own security. I chose me. My life is different now. It's more solid. The Janet Campbell Revocable Living Trust is filed, it's legal, and it's active. My house and my bank accounts are safe inside it, with my name on the top as the boss. The only boss. My beneficiaries are all updated. My niece in Chicago is my healthcare surrogate, and she has a copy of my living will. It's all in writing. Inside my pantry door, there's a simple, typed list. It has the number for my AC guy, my handyman, and my walking group friends, Rosa and Pete. My passwords aren't on little scraps of paper anymore. They are in a locked notebook, hidden in a place only I know. These are the small, simple things that let me sleep through the night. The Sunday calls with Marshall still happen. They're not awkward anymore. They're just our new normal. We talk about the weather. He tells me about his budgeting class. He's almost finished with the course. I tell him about my stretch class and how Mavis and I always end up laughing in the back row. He hasn't asked me for a single dollar. He hasn't mentioned Jean. And I haven't asked. That's his life. And this is mine. We are taking small, quiet steps on a new path. There are no more surprise notaries at my door. No more unsigned deeds in my mailbox. Just a son and a mother finding a new, safer way to talk. This was my story. It was hard and it was real. And now I want to ask you, because I just know, I am not the only one who has ever felt that cold fear. If you were in my place, would you have confronted them right at 6 a.m. in that hallway? Or was I right to wait, to write it down, and to call the lawyer first? And I really need to know what you think about this, that moment in my kitchen. Tell me honestly in the comments, what did you think about me turning on that voice recorder? Was I right to do whatever it took to get the proof? Or do you think I went too far and was just as sneaky as they were? I truly want to read what you would have done. What documents do you believe every woman our age should have set up right now, today? Please share your wisdom in the comments. We can all learn from each other. If this story helped you, or if you think it could help someone you love, a sister, a friend, another woman who deserves to keep her peace and keep her keys, please share this video with them. These stories matter. Our voices matter. So please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It tells the people who run this platform that these conversations are important and that our generation has a voice that needs to be heard. And don't forget to comment with one thing you're going to do this week. Just one small thing to protect yourself. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for being here. Now, go watch the next story on your screen. Keep learning and keep living. Lastly, remember to download this wonderful book called Coming Back to Myself, 60 Liberating Truths to Find Yourself Again. You'll find it in the pinned comment below. Now, if you like this story, go ahead and click on the next video appearing on your screen, because in it is a story of betrayal and revolt like you've never seen before on her Kindle Stories. Thank you for listening.